days. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week, the India story will bring the most incisive analysis, the most authoritative.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Modi Gambhir. Our cover story tonight on Gravitas is about Russia. Since the Russia-Ukraine war started, the one question that has dominated the discourse has been who is winning. What we can tell you tonight is that Russia is winning the game of making money off the war. That's right. Tonight on Gravitas, we tell you how the Russia-Ukraine war has benefited Moscow, how the Russian defense sector is booming, how the war is becoming the perfect platform for Russia to showcase its weapons, almost like a weapons exhibition, and how its defense sector is getting richer. We join the dots for you and get you the bigger picture. Also on the show for you tonight, China has been accused of bribing Zambia's foreign minister. We tell you all about Beijing's murky web of bribery. As India battles the Pakistani drone menace, as many as 90 Pakistani drones have been intercepted in India, we get to the complete story. What is the zombie deer disease and why are experts raising alarm? The disease is haunting the United States. We tell you more. Also, the fog season is making headlines in India as the fog clogs air travel in the Indian capital. The war in Ukraine is making Russia richer. Now, don't look surprised. It is a fact. Just like the fact that Western sanctions have had little impact on Russian economy, or that the West and the rest of the world is still buying Russian oil. We can tell you that they are also looking to buy Russian weapons. The war zone in Ukraine has become a testing cum exhibition ground. Russia is exhibiting the expertise of its weapons, also their superiority over Western machines that Ukraine is using. Russia's defense sector is booming. Existing weapons are being improved. New weapons are being developed, refined, and used to make battle gains, and also defend these gains. The world is watching and buyers are taking note. No one knows this better than Russia. It is preparing for a boom in orders. Its defense sector has significantly increased its output. From missiles to drones, aircraft and ammunition, production has been ramped up across the defense sector. Rostec has increased production of some of its military hardware by over 10 times. From Africa alone, Russia has received contracts worth $5.2 billion. At home, Russia's ground forces received 1,500 modernized tanks. Sure, a lot of these machines are currently being used and marketed in the battlefield, but quite a lot of them are also being delivered abroad. And most of it will be up for sale once the war ends. Russia's United Aircraft Corporation, or UAC, has received an order for 76 Su-57s from the country's aerospace forces. The Sukhoi Su-57 is a fifth-generation fighter. It is designed to destroy all types of targets, be it from air, ground or sea. This aircraft can reach a supersonic cruising speed. It has the most advanced onboard radio equipment, including an electronic second pilot. In other words, the aircraft has an artificial intelligence pilot assisting the human fighter pilot. For obvious reasons, it's hard to pinpoint how exactly this aircraft is being used in Ukraine, but there are two things that we can confirm. Number one, in the year 2022, after the war in Ukraine started, the United Aircraft Corporation's head, Yuri Slosar, had said that Su-57 shows its best side during a special operation. He added, and I'm quoting now, "I have heard feedback from the Aerospace Forces and the Ministry of Defense. We are receiving feedback and are proud that the aircraft is now at the stage of serial production." And cut to 2023. The order for Su-57 doubled. In November, the UAC registered a patent for another aircraft, two-seater version of the Su-57. The UAC said that this aircraft would, quote-unquote, act as an airborne command post for network-oriented operations. This is what I meant by advancing existing machines and developing new ones. Let's now talk about marketing. Rosabaran Export is the state company that takes care of Russian defense export. It's basically the state arms seller. The catalog on its website is constantly being updated. In November, the company's CEO was attending the Dubai 2023 Air Show. The Su-57E fifth-generation fighter had been put on display. The CEO expressed his hope of exporting the aircraft to the UAE one day. After Dubai, Rosabaran Expert headed to Egypt. It took part in the International Defense Industry Exhibition in Cairo. Russia showcased its finest aircraft, armored vehicles, missile systems as the war in Ukraine continued and Kiev struggled to make military gains. Russia exhibited its military system, UAVs, small arms and ammunitions as weapons that will also prove to be effective for Africa in its fight against terror. This year alone, African countries accounted for over 30% of Rosenborn's exports' total supplies. The total value of these contracts is estimated to be over $5.2 billion. IL-76 is another aircraft that Russia is betting big on. This is a military transport aircraft. 6 of these planes were manufactured this year, and Russia is hoping to take that number to 18. The story is not limited to flying machines alone. This year, Russia's ground forces took delivery of nearly 1,500 modernized tanks. This data was proudly shared by the country's defense minister. He added that the ground forces also received as many as 2,518 infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers. Rostec is Russia's biggest arms producer. It is also sanctioned by the West. But you see, that has not stopped Rostec from increasing the production of some of its military hardware by over 10 times. In fact, the company claims it is going forward at cruising speed. And chances are the momentum will only pick up in 2024. You see, Russia is set to increase its defense spending by as much as 70% in the new year. It's not just the defense sector that stands to benefit from this spending. Military contracts are given to food manufacturers, pharma companies, construction companies. They all, and the Russian economy as a whole, standing to benefit from this defense boom. The war in Ukraine has put at stake Russia's reputation as a defense manufacturer, and Russia is making the most of the spotlight. It's showing off more than just its defense might. In August this year, Russia debuted the SJ-100. It is also known as the Sukhoi Superjet 100. Unlike the Su-57, this is a civilian aircraft. The short-haul jet is made by the UAC. The aircraft has the maximum seating capacity of 103. The maximum flight range is 4,320 kilometers. Just have a look at the UAC website. It boasts that the airliner is in demand on the Russian market as it offers optimal combination of range, capacity and comfort. While Ukraine's defense sector battles corruption and the West runs pillar to post, trying to cope with Ukraine's burn rate, Russia's defense sector is getting rich and richer. So who do you think this joke is on? And our next story is about China's murky web of bribery, a tool that it often uses in return for favors. But who exactly does China bribe? Anyone willing to do its bidding, be it heads of global bodies, chairpersons of global banks, even world leaders. You heard that right. Just have a look at what happened in Zambia recently. The country's foreign minister has resigned. Why? Because of his alleged business dealings with Beijing. According to reports, Stanley Kakubo was involved in corruption with a Chinese businessman. The allegations emerged after a video surfaced on social media. The video essentially showed two people counting cash stacked upon a table.
$16, 16, 40. Yes. So, depending on how much? My 50.
Yes, 50,000.
So 50.
100, 200, 300, 400, 500.
So what was this cash meant for? How much was it? Who was counting it? Well, the cash was apparently a hefty sum of $100,000. It was secretly exchanged between a Chinese and a Zambian mining firm. The deal was apparently orchestrated by the Zambian foreign minister. It is not clear if he himself was counting the cash. But this video triggered a social media frenzy, with many Zambians accusing Kakubo of corruption. Before the controversy could spiral out of control, the 43-year-old Kakubo, who had been Zambia's foreign minister since 2021, put down his papers. And what reason did he cite for that resignation? Well, he said he was quitting because of quote-unquote malicious claims over a business transaction. This is what his full statement read. In view of the matter that is currently in the media regarding malicious claims over a business transaction between my private family business and our business partner with whom we still have good relations. The office of the Zambian president was quick to acknowledge the resignation. Here's what it said in a statement. The president has accepted the resignation of the Honorable Stanley Kakubo from his cabinet position as Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. The president acknowledges the commendable work and leadership. And what has China said on all of this? Well, last we checked, the Chinese side had not issued a statement. And why would it? When its covert and corrupt dealings have been exposed. And what's worse, this is not the first time China has been accused of bribing a foreign leader. In fact, in March this year, the outgoing leader of the Federated States of Micronesia, which is by far one of the world's tiniest countries, had accused China of bribing the officials and making direct threats against his personal safety. Former President David Panolo had issued a 13-page letter in which he blamed China for carrying out a campaign of political warfare, which included activities like bribery, psychological warfare, blackmail. He said that Beijing did so to achieve its long-term goal of taking over Taiwan. Let me quote the most interesting excerpt from that statement. What else do you call it when an elected official is given an envelope filled with money after a meal at the PRC embassy or after an inauguration? What else do you call it when a senior official is discreetly given a smartphone after visiting Beijing? And next we have the Solomon Islands. In the year 2019, the lawmakers claimed that they were offered bribes worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to gain their support on Taiwan. In other words, they were asked to make a diplomatic switch from Taipei to Beijing in exchange for money. Many opposition MPs said that such dealings were an open secret in the country's parliament. And you know the most shocking bit here? China has also been accused of trying to corrupt the United Nations. In the year 2018, a Chinese real estate developer from Macau was accused of bribing the former UN ambassador to the Dominican Republic. His name, Francis Lorenzo. He had pleaded guilty to taking bribes in return for getting projects approved. Can you believe that? And a year before this, in the year 2017, the head of a Hong Kong-based NGO was accused of bribing the former foreign minister of Senegal. What for, you ask? The same reason, getting Chinese projects approved in Senegal. And these, by the way, were just a few examples. There are many more instances of China bribing world leaders, and many more instances of China getting caught in doing so. The Chinese state has made a habit, it seems, of using money to establish diplomatic ties and infiltrating various sectors in comparatively smaller nations. It's about time that global bodies get Beijing to task for such wretched affairs. Last evening, something alarming happened here in India. It was 5:53 in the evening. The police received an ominous call. They were informed of a loud noise being heard behind the Israeli embassy. It was an explosive sound. Before I tell you more, listen to what an Israeli diplomat in India had to say.
This evening, several minutes after 5, an explosion occurred in close proximity to the embassy. All our workers are safe, all our diplomats are safe. Our security teams are working in full cooperation with the local Delhi security, and they will investigate the matter further.
The sensitivity of the location of the incident sent alarm bells ringing. You see, Chanakyapuri is a diplomatic neighborhood in the national capital. It houses foreign missions of several countries, and anything suspicious happening in that area could not be taken lightly. So without losing time, senior officers rushed to the spot. A dog squad, bomb disposal squad were deployed. And soon, crime team and forensic experts also arrived at the scene. The area of interest was sealed off. An eyewitness claimed that he had heard the loud noise. It resembled that of a bursting tire. When he came out, he reportedly saw smoke billowing from the top of a tree. The authorities thoroughly searched the blast site. Initially, reports said that no traces of burnt explosives were found, but later it was reported that the police have recovered shrapnel and ball bearings from the spot. What they also found was a one-page letter. It was said to be wrapped in an Israeli flag. What did it say? We cannot say for sure. The police have not disclosed many details, but reports say it was abusive in nature, quote unquote. It criticized Israel's actions in Gaza and spoke of revenge. The letter has been sent for forensic analysis. Who could have sent it? India's anti-terror body, the National Investigation Agency, is probing the matter, and experts are also considering the possibility of a chemical explosion. But at the moment, nothing can be said for sure. The police have also found CCTV footage. It shows two men who were present at the spot when the said blast occurred. As of now, a hunt is on for the suspects. Police officials are scanning all the footage and trying to trace their route. Meanwhile, security has been beefed up around the Israeli embassy and other establishments. Israel's National Security Council has warned that the blast could have been an attack. The authorities have cautioned Israelis in India. They have issued an advisory urging Israelis to be vigilant, to avoid public places such as malls, restaurants, hotels, bars, markets, to avoid participating in crowded events, avoid displaying Israeli symbols, and avoid posting details of their trips on social media, both before the journey and in real time. The incident has created panic. Who could have been behind this? Reports say the letter mentioned of a group called Sir Allah Resistance. As it turns out, not much is known about the group, but the police is looking into it. Pakistan is good at exporting terror. Now it's also exporting drugs and weapons. How so? Why are something that is difficult to track, that often escapes surveillance across a largely porous border? I'm talking about drones. In fact, Indian border security is saying that it is battling an unprecedented drone menace. Pakistan is sending drones across the border. Some of them are as wide as 8 feet. They are equipped with high-resolution cameras. And what do these drones do, really? They aim to drop drugs into the Indian state of Punjab. You heard that right. The drones often carry opium or heroin in small sacks, sometimes even in Coca-Cola bottles. At times, the Pakistani drones have also dropped weapons in India. This includes pistols and Chinese-made assault rifles. Since the beginning of the year, Indian border security officials have intercepted 90 drones from Pakistan, some as deep as 12 kilometers inside the Indian territory. And these, by the way, are the drones that have been caught. The actual number is expected to be much higher. And as I told you, the drones have high-resolution cameras on them. What does that mean? That these drones might be serving as the eyes of Pakistani agents. The BSF identified a few hotspots. 2 kilometers away from the border lies a village named Atari. Its vast area of rice paddy fields is a regular dropping zone. Most of the drones have been seized from this area. You see, Pakistani infiltrations across the border have been happening for decades. Everything from camels, carrier pigeons, human traffickers, underground pipes have been used to ferry drugs across the heavily guarded border. But since 2019, drones have become the main modus operandi of trafficking drugs. And the problem is only worsening as drones become cheaper and more accessible. According to the border security forces, drones are responsible for about 60% of the drug smuggling in Punjab this year. In fact, officials say that it has added an entirely new dimension to security, and the technology is only getting more sophisticated. Now, there was a time when drones could be detected simply because of the noise, their lights, or anti-drone technology, but gone are those days. Now there are mini drones that are nearly silent. There are models that can fly as high as 1 kilometer. They are a lot more difficult to spot. In fact, some models can detect anti-drone technology and change their frequency and direction mid-air to avoid being captured. And as the winter sets in, the foggy conditions and poor visibility have only added to the menace. These drones are not only security threats, they're also fueling a drug crisis in Punjab. The state is grappling with the drug problem as it is. A 2022 study revealed some alarming numbers. It said around 3 million adults in Punjab were hooked onto drugs. This accounts for over 15% of the population of the state. Amid all this cheap heroin coming over from Pakistan, It's not helping the case. The situation is especially bad in the border village of Attari. A specialist addiction center has been set up to help the drug abusers. And what is India doing to deal with Pakistan's drone menace? The border security forces have implemented a three-pronged strategy. It aims to stop the drug supply, foster awareness against the drug abuse, and empowering the youth to channelize their energy in the right direction. Let's now talk about a tragic development coming in from South Korea. Actor Lee Sun-kyun of Parasite fame has seemingly taken his own life. Our next report takes a look at the latest coming in on that case and also explores the harrowing suicide rate in the country.
South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, best known for his role in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, has died in an apparent suicide. The 48-year-old was found dead in a car in a park in central Seoul on Wednesday. Lee's wife had earlier reported to the police that he had left home and she had found what looked like a suicide note. Lee Sun-kyun had recently been under police investigation of his alleged drug use, particularly marijuana and other psychoactive drugs. South Korea has tough drug laws and such crimes are punishable by at least 6 months in prison. Repeat offenders and dealers can even face up to 14 years of jail time. Lee had already been questioned 3 times by the police for substance abuse. The latest round of interrogation went on for 19 hours this weekend. South Korea is famous for K-pop, K-drama. That list is long, but what it is infamous for is its suicide rate. In this outwardly successful society, over 35 people on an average commit suicide every day. Suicide is the leading cause of death among those aged 10 to 39. There are 25.2 deaths per 10,000 people in South Korea. The suicide rate here is the highest among the 38 member Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. The country has consistently had the highest suicide rate, except for 2 years in 2016 and 2017. In fact, the suicide rate is more than double the OECD average of 10.6 deaths. The country's statistics agency says 12,906 people died by suicide in 2022 alone. Young people make up a sizable number of these statistics. But why is the suicide rate in South Korea so high? Well, it is a mix of economic, social, and cultural factors. The country became a global economic powerhouse after the Korean War ended in 1953. However, its state welfare services could not keep up. The economic growth contributed to rising inequality. The effect can be seen on the strata of South Korean society that is most at risk. A 2021 study showed that suicidal ideation is more common among young people with low incomes. Most older adults who considered suicide attributed it to health problems and financial difficulties. High levels of inequality also meant high levels of competition. Success here is usually measured in terms of money or social status. The pressure is rather high. This begins quite early in life. For instance, one study revealed that 44% of middle and high school students have thought of taking their own lives. Academic stress was the reason. There are cultural issues too. Experts have highlighted that ties between family members and neighbors have weakened. The social support system has also weakened. While things are slowly changing, it hasn't been enough. For its part, the South Korean government has recently announced a 5-year plan to prevent suicides. A state-funded medical checkup for mental health every 2 years is part of the plan. So is greater support for local communities to look after vulnerable people. The South Korean government's ultimate goal with this plan is to reduce the suicide rate by 30%. Japan too has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. However, the rate has been gradually declining since 2003. A joint study by Korean and Japanese researchers earlier found that money is a differentiating factor here. In 2018, South Korea's budget for suicide prevention was around $16.8 million, which was just 2.1% of Japan's budget of $793.7 million. The cost of this neglect is faced by everyday South Koreans left on their own with little to no recourse, fighting a silent war in their heads with deadly consequences. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Have you heard of the term bamboo curtain? It was a Cold War political demarcation in East Asia, a demarcation between communist states and the capitalist non-communist states. On one hand were China, Soviet Union, North Korea. On the other, there were countries like Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the rest. And as it pursues such policies on the domestic front, China is also placing sanctions on foreign research firms. Let's tell you the case of the Los Angeles-based research firm Caron. China has placed sanctions on this company. Why? For monitoring human rights violations in Xinjiang. At least 2 of its lead analysts are now barred from entry. For China, this demarcation meant stopping the flow of capitalist ideas and forbidding anything that violated communist principles. This curtain essentially has remained intact for decades. And today, in the digital age, China is turning this bamboo curtain into a cyber wall, a wall that blocks anything which the Chinese state does not like. Take the recent decision, for instance, about what happened regarding a WeChat post on Saturday. China warned military enthusiasts against posting content related to the PLA on the internet. What kind of content, you ask? Everything. Photos, articles, research work. If it gives away too much information, China says it will punish those behind it. This is what China's Ministry of State Security said in a statement. Let me quote from it. This is a cool hobby, but you must be very careful. Some individual military enthusiasts severely endanger national military security by illegally obtaining information regarding national defense and disseminating them on the internet, with a focus on military airports, ports, national defense and military industrial units. They drove to or took ferries or planes that passed by designated routes and clandestinely photographed with telephoto lenses or drones. Now, why was this warning required? Because of amateur military enthusiasts sharing pictures and details of military equipment. And this has become a trend of sorts on the Chinese social media. The military fans say that they are doing so to keep their fellow citizens informed and also to promote nationalism. Beijing says their actions only endanger national security. And so it plans to punish any violators. First-time or occasional offenders may receive only a warning, but repeat offenders could be imprisoned for up to 7 years. We understand China's inhibitions because in the age of open source intelligence, Western experts can keep a tab on China's military by analyzing photographs of the new military equipment posted online. But this also reveals just how paranoid the Chinese state really has become, especially after images of China's newest warship got leaked. The Fujian. It is a marquee program for the PLA Navy. An 80,000-ton warship, the largest in China's arsenal. It is considered to be a rival to American warships. In November, this report was released by the Paris-based Naval News. It said that the Fujian had started testing its catapult system. The report was based on videos posted on Weibo, which were apparently taken from a passenger plane. The report has infuriated China, so much so that it plans to go after its own citizens who posted it. Too bad. Celebrating national pride will now get them into trouble. This is what the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Mao Ning, said in a statement. By issuing the report, The United States once again spread false stories on Xinjiang and illegally sanctioned Chinese officials and companies, citing so-called human rights issues. If the US refuses to change course, China will not flinch and will respond in kind. And these were just a few examples of the kind of censorship that is prevalent in China. The list of examples is slightly longer. You see, the Chinese government blocks many websites for a variety of political, socio-cultural, economic reasons. It uses internet censorship to maintain social stability, blocking content that might incite protests, strikes, demonstrations, or any form of civil unrest. The CCP also blocks websites discussing sensitive issues from China's past, like the Tiananmen Square protests, in which the Chinese government branded protesters as rioters. And then we have the Tibetan independence movement. China has censored all information on Tibet, quashed discussion about its political status or human rights issues, and cultural suppression. Besides this, these apps and tools are also banned in China. Instagram, Gmail, Spotify, Wikipedia, WhatsApp, YouTube, Snapchat. Just to put it simply, in modern-day China, the CCP retains strict control over all media, the internet and public discourse, and it does so to prevent the dissemination of views that contradict its own. This story is disturbing and it's not for the faint-hearted, so I advise viewer discretion. In Jaipur, a woman and her friend were mowed down by a vehicle. It wasn't an accident, but a case of rage, of uncontrollable anger. Have a look at this video first. The woman has died. Her friend is injured. The story begins on Monday night. At around 11 p.m., 25-year-old Uma had gone out for dinner with her friend. The name, reports say, is Raj Kumar. The man is 27 years old. The two had reportedly gone to a hotel which Raj Kumar had invested in. It was there that the two got into an argument with a man named Mangesh. Because this matter is under investigation, it's hard to verify how the brawl started. Some reports say that Mangesh was passing inappropriate comments at Uma. He even tried touching her inappropriately. Uma and her friend reportedly got into an argument with Mangesh, following which she left the hotel and was waiting for a cab. The details of what happened next also are sketchy. At one point, you can see Kumar standing in front of the car. He is trying to stop the car from hitting Uma. The car drives into the two of them anyway. So it may be a while before the entire truth is out. But here's one thing. I can't help but ask, what on earth justifies this act? What level of entitlement does one have to be consumed in order to mow down two people? Did this man think that he will get away with it? Was there no sense of fear? The victim, Uma, was in her 20s. She was from Madhya Pradesh. She had come to the big city with dreams. She was reportedly working as an event manager. And now her life has been cut short. Her parents have lost a young daughter. What for? Just because some man did not know how to control his anger? What have we as a society become, really? This incident is a reminder of the many things wrong, of the many things that need to be fixed at home and outside. Have you heard of the zombie deer disease? I know what you're thinking already. Yes, another disease is making headlines. It's haunting the United States, and experts are calling it a slow-moving disaster. Scientists have warned that the disease could spread to human beings. First things first, what exactly is the zombie deer disease? What do we know about it? Why is it called the zombie deer disease? Why are experts worried? Why is the disease in the news? Let's break it all down for you. The zombie deer disease is also called the chronic wasting disease, or CWD. It affects animals like the deer, reindeer, mows, etc. Basically, a group of animals called the cervids. It happens because of a malformed protein that gets collected and leads to behavioral changes. It leaves the affected animals drooling, stumbling. Basically, it causes changes in their nervous systems, in their brains. It leads to what's been called a blank stare, and which is why the name zombie deer disease. It may take over a year for symptoms in the deer to develop. Hundreds of animals have been infected with the illness in the US over the last year. In November, the disease was detected in the Yellowstone National Park, and this discovery meant reason for a lot of concern. It's, after all, the country's most famous nature reserve. It is a fatal disease. There are no known treatments or vaccines. It has been reported in 31 states in the US. As of now, the disease is spreading among wildlife in North America, but experts are warning about the spread of the disease to human beings as well. And researchers want the governments to be prepared for this scenario. The zombie deer disease was first discovered in 1967 in Colorado, and so far there has been no known case of humans getting affected. But at the same time, experts say that just because there has not been a spillover case so far does not mean that this is impossible. So the need of the hour is for governments to be prepared. In fact, in 2017, the Alliance for Public Wildlife estimated that in a year, 7,000 to 15,000 animals that were infected by this deadly disease were being consumed by human beings. It also said that this figure was expected to rise 20% annually. Also, the hunting season is currently going on in the US, so it is being recommended that harvested game animals be tested for disease. All said and done, the world cannot afford to have another deadly outbreak affecting human beings, so governments, authorities need to act now and act fast. Meanwhile, a silent epidemic is taking over Pakistan. It's not an epidemic caused by bacteria or viruses, but one caused by Pakistani men. What is that epidemic? Domestic violence. Incidents of domestic violence are on a steady rise in the country. The Asian Development Bank has released a damning report titled Gendered Impacts of the COVID-19 Pandemic in Central and West Asia. The report conducted a survey in the Pakistani provinces of Punjab and Sindh. And what did the report discover? A staggering 40% increase in incidents of threats of physical violence and a 46% spike in physical assault from spouses. Let me just give you some numbers just to put this in perspective. 14% of surveyed women knew someone in their community who was threatened with physical harm by the husband. 19% knew of someone who was physically assaulted by the husband. 27% knew of cases where children were physically assaulted by their parents. These numbers depict a stark reality of women and children in Pakistan and what they have to go through. They are bearing the brunt of this increase in domestic violence. And what is causing this drastic spike in violence? The report claims that the rate of violence against women and girls increased significantly due to loss of livelihood. Pakistan is currently going through a turbulent economic period. We've been telling you about this. And this is now translating into pressure in the domestic realm as well. The lack of gender strategies and gender equality laws was also underlined in Pakistan. So what really are the options for the country to treat this epidemic? Stakeholders who belong to various sectors of the society highlighted the need to develop and strengthen women's entrepreneurship as a top priority, the importance of the private sector and the role it can have in promoting gender equality and women's empowerment was also repeatedly emphasized upon. Pakistan is also a country where agriculture is one of the main sectors of employment. The report urges the stakeholders to underline the need to pay more attention to women in agriculture. Policies related to land, agricultural services, technology should be designed and implemented in gender-responsive ways. Here's another aspect stressed upon by the report. There is a need to design and strengthen programs that aim at developing women's capacity to grow their businesses. And how can that be achieved? Integrated loans and training programs. These measures can help women to transition from microfinancing to standard banking. And then there are measures to protect women who are caregivers and homemakers. Social protection programs can be developed which can support unpaid caregivers and avoid any untoward penalizing by the men of the house for their lack of income. So where does this leave us? This shows that Pakistan is still a long way from eradicating domestic violence, and this silent epidemic is already here and has the capability to affect millions of Pakistanis. And our next story is about Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of Britain. He has become a man in trouble. A new survey, in fact, shows how the British voter has lost faith in the leader. This is a YouGov survey for the Times UK. It was carried out to assess the performance of the Tories under Rishi Sunak, whether they've done a good job, whether there is disillusionment, and whether the voters will give the Tories another term. The results for the survey should worry Rishi Sunak, to say the least. Here's why. Only 6% of the voters think that the Tories have done a good job and deserve to remain in office. 24% think that they have done a poor job but would still prefer them in power. And an overwhelming 43% think that the Tories have done a poor job in power and should be replaced by the Labour Party. And next, they were asked if the Tories are fit for government or not. Only 15% said that they are fit for government, 17% were not sure, and a majority of 68% said that they were not fit to run the country. The survey also asked the voters as to who they would prefer to handle Britain's pressing issues like immigration, economy, climate change, the NHS, crime. The choice was between a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak and a Labour government under Keir Starmer. And here's what the survey showed. On immigration, 27% prefer a Labour government under Keir Starmer. Only 17% prefer a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak. On the economy, 31% preferring a Labour government under Keir Starmer. Only 23% prefer a Conservative government under Rishi Sunak. On climate change, 29% prefer a Labour government. 12% only prefer the Tories. On NHS, an overwhelming 41% prefer the Labour Party. Just 13% want a Sunak-led government. And lastly, even on crime, 29% want a Labour government. 17% want a Conservative government led by Rishi Sunak. How should we view this data? Is this a sign of voter disillusionment with Rishi Sunak? A sign that his days at 10 Downing Street are numbered? That certainly seems to be the case, and the data has not been lost on Rishi Sunak. As I speak, Sunak is preparing to win the voters back through a series of events and policy reforms. To start with, the Sunak-led government is considering axing the inheritance tax in 2 months in a clear bid to attract more voters. For the unversed, this is a tax on the estate of someone who has died. It includes their properties, possessions, money. Currently, the tax threshold is 40%, and Sunak plans to bring it down. That's not all. Sunak is also planning to reduce the income tax threshold and lower the basic tax rate in the UK. Will these measures work? One can't say for sure, because Sunak is in trouble on several fronts. He has made a complete mess of the Rwanda policy. His immigration minister has resigned. Factions have formed within his own party. 2 weeks back, just hours after the Prime Minister tabled a bill to save his Rwanda deportation policy, Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick called it quits because the legislation did not allow the government to override the international laws and deport the immigrants. Jenrick said the law aimed at reviving the policy did not go far enough, and the policy will face further hurdles in court. Senior Tories have warned Sunak that his plan is doomed to fail. There's also a rebellion boiling among the Conservatives. It's not just the right-wing members. There are 4 different factions, each with its own demands. What are these groups and how much of a threat are they to Rishi Sunak? Number 1, One Nation. It was set up to represent the views of centrist Tories. Faction number 2 being the European Research Group faction. Number 3, the New Conservatives. This one was set up in May this year, and it has brought together some disparate right-wing groups. And lastly, we have the Conservative Growth Group. This one is forged out of Liz Truss's failed premiership. It is focused on the libertarian-style policies that MPs believe will boost the economy. Now, all these factions have put their personal views and interests over the broader party's objectives. And together, they can make or break Sunak's premiership. It's like Sunak's premiership is hanging by a thread. His approval ratings are down. The voters have lost faith in his government. His policies are backfiring. His MPs have been resigning. And there are factions within the Tories. Will there be a civil war within his party? And is this the beginning of a rebellion among the Conservatives? And will this rebellion spell the end of Rishi Sunak? Only time will tell. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
इन्होंने गिरफ्तार कर लिया। अभी मैं सामान बंद करके निकल रहा था। सुप्रीम टाइम किया मेरी रिहाई का 2:35 में।
Да, охренеть. Ой, жарко сюда. Вот зря мы сюда пошли, там осколки прилетят. Поэтому говорю голову. Нифига себе. Тихо, ты чё?
India's global voice.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is made